Imagine surfing a 50-foot wave at Nazare. Imagine setting a cycling world record at the UCI World Championship in Mexico. Imagine winning 4 world titles as a surfer. Imagine exceeding enterprise sales targets by 140% at one of Australia's largest corporates. Imagine being the subject of a Netflix documentary. Imagine publishing a book. Imagine chairing boards, building programs for blind children, and serving as a public ambassador for multiple charities and NGOs. Imagine being recognised by the Crown as a member of the Order of Australia for all of that work. I'd like you to imagine any one of these things. Now imagine doing all of those things blind. Our guest today, Matt Formston, did all of them in parallel for 15 years, blind. At 5 years old, Matt was told that he would go blind. The professor who delivered the diagnosis told his parents the standard 1983 prognosis for macular dystrophy. He would never hold a real job. He would never have many friends. He would never play sport. He would never live independently. Matt's mum and dad listened very, very carefully and then asked a different question. Why can't he? Why not? That question became the operating system Matt has run on for over 40 years. The method became a framework. The framework became a book. Why not? Welcome, Matt. Welcome to 10 Lessons Learned.
Well, what an intro, mate. I might have to take you around with me to keynotes. That was pretty special. Thanks for having me.
Not at all. I appreciate you making time to talk to us. I was really inspired by the lessons you sent me. So before we get started, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, well, I think you've already done it. They're all the achievements. I think the one thing that I will say that obviously my sporting achievements and the Netflix documentary and all those things generally take precedence as the sort of highline story. But in reality, my blindness has never been my biggest challenge. Sport was sort of my main thing that was my identity was linked to growing up. School was horrible. I got bullied. Kids would say, "How many fingers am I holding up?" They would delete my work on my laptop. They would do, wasn't kind place. But on the sporting field, I just got measured on my contribution. So the boys would say, if you missed a tackle, you're soft or you're lazy or just all the things they would say to everyone else. Whereas at school, I would get called blind boy and all the different things because I went through mainstream schooling. So I lost sport. It's a long story, but essentially I had glandular fever. So I got sick and couldn't play for a year. One of my friends around the same time, literally within a 12-month period, took his life, and my life spiraled into a place where I lost all my standards and I lost my identity, and I created a new identity around other people's approval and other people's nod of approval. And that was a really dangerous place to be. So I ended up in pub fights and, just doing what wasn't a good place. And it took me about 10 years to get out of that. And then rebuilding myself to become the person that created all those that list of achievements that you reeled off. That is my greatest achievement is rebuilding myself. And I suppose they're the frameworks in the book of how I did that and how I've gone on to win a world title, break a world record, or win a business award every year since I did that.
Incredibly inspirational. And the book is up on the screen so people can see the title of your book, and, there'll be a link to where you can go get that book. But, to have achieved everything you've achieved after everything you've gone through, and then be recognized with an Order of Australia. I mean, congratulations, Matt. This is why I'm honored to have you on 10 Lessons. What we try and do is share the things that lift us up with all of our audience so that they can learn from our mistakes. So I'm really looking forward to this. Well, with that said, let's get started. So your first lesson, obviously straight from your book, why not? So tell me about why not.
So I grew up in a house where and my parents need, a significant amount of the credit for all the things that I've achieved. But I grew up in a house where we weren't allowed to say the word can't.
Ooh,
And a lot of people will, that will sort of go, yep, my dad said that too, and my mum said that. We weren't allowed to say can't either. I think the thing that was different in my house is if we ever said the word like, I can't do my homework or I can't hit a nail with a hammer because I'm blind, my dad would say, why not? And then followed with another why not. He was a sales and marketing director in the alcohol industry. He ran sales teams. He was always dealing with objections from either his team or from customers. So when his little 8-year-old son said, I can't do my homework, I was never going to win that conversation. So, and what happens when you keep asking why not is you start then getting into the granular detail of your can't, of your problem, of your challenge, of your obstacle, whatever it is that's in front of you. And when you get into the minutiae, when you get into the detail of your problem, you start finding the solution.
that's so true. It doesn't surprise me that it came from a sales professional because that's what we're taught. We're taught to dig through. But when you apply, I never did, but I would love to have gone back and applied that same learning to my children. Why not? Why can't you do this? And it doesn't just apply to kids.
No.
Ask yourself, people, why not?
Look, I work with clients all over the world. If you think of a big logo, I've probably worked with them. And they always said, how do we overcome adversity? Like we're challenged, we're going through change at the moment, we're doing all this. And I think why not is the easiest way that I can say how you build resilience, because as soon as you keep putting it back on people to say, why not? It doesn't matter what it is. I mean, I'm sure at SpaceX, there's problems around, weight, fuel economy. There's all sorts of things they're dealing with. But if they keep chucking why not in front of things, they'll find ways to break all those things that no one's ever done before.
Absolutely. And don't use why not as a shield. Use it inquisitively.
Yes,
Like,
correct.
Why?
It's a tool.
It's a tool.
Yes.
There are too few tools that we can use that are given to us. And the fact that you got this at such a young age. And I love in your intro, the fact that this is your operating system. I think what a wonderful way to visualize it, because it is, and it should be. I really think, Matt, that is a lesson for everybody. And I've said this many, many times with a lot of my guests. People, you're watching, you're listening, rewind this bit. Listen to Matt again, because you need to hear this. You need to internalize it. Understand what why not means. It's really, really a powerful lesson. Well, that's great, Matt. Let's move on, because your lesson number 2 baffled me a little bit. So I'm hoping you can explain it to me. 2 gears, 1 engine.
So I'm going to go back against my parents. I grew up in a house with a mother who was a hairdresser. She was a hairdresser. She's still the hardest working, at 78 years old, still the hardest working person I know. Me and my sister used to have to run, walk to keep up with her. She's now got 6 grandchildren. They all have to run, walk to keep up with her. She moves so fast. My father, on the other hand, is a guy that measures 5 times and cuts once. It was all about strategy. I learned from both of them that they're both gears that you can be in. But if you get stuck in either one of those gears, mum will always act first and maybe make mistakes because she's always in go mode. And dad will maybe take too long to do things because he's always in strategy mode. And so I learned from them that there's 2 modes to be in. You got strategy mode and execution mode. And in business, I think that's become a superpower of mine, to be conscious of what mode I'm in. Because I think we were all familiar with, creating strategy and then executing, but then we can float between those 2 gears and not be conscious of when we're in each gear. So this lesson is about being conscious of which gear you're in and then not getting stuck in one gear or the other.
You know how long it takes people to learn that? I mean, I'm on the twilight side of my career, and I can say to you, hand on heart, that I only learned that lesson maybe 5 years ago. So it's an important direction to point yourself in, to understand, and it comes back to self-awareness.
Yeah.
Understanding who you are and how you operate. Yes, there are 2 modes. I, for a long time, was just in strategy mode. Then I switched and I just went straight into execution mode. But the fact that when you're in execution mode, you don't stop and think, or you're in a rush to execute as opposed to being a little more patient. Yes, I'm going to get it done, but I will take my time. And you've seen this in startups, you've seen this everywhere. People who rush to get a result don't get the result that they could have gotten had they slowed down a little bit.
Yeah. And then other founders that spend too much time building a robust plan and they never execute, they never get anywhere because they're too busy planning.
Exactly. Very important lesson. And I think it's one, again, that you've got to think about, you've got to appreciate. Let's go to lesson number 3. Standards without consequences are just wishes. My God, that is so true. So true.
Look, I think everyone's familiar with, any business you work in, any reception you walk into, everyone's got their 3 values that they have on the wall, on their homepage of their website, and they tell their team. But then if you walk around and talk to people in the business and you say, okay, well, if that's one of your values, and I'm going to call it a standard, what happens if you don't do that? So if there's no consequence to not adhering to something, that's not really a standard. And I would say it's not a value. It's just a wish. And this is the foundation. I've got a trust formula that I've built. We'll get to trust at the end because that's I think the most valuable lesson anyone can learn. But the standards is the baseline. It's the beginning part of my formula. And you need to understand what those standards are. You need to agree with your team what they are. And look, a simple ones like a Teams meeting. Like if people start complaining, oh, Tim's always late he's too late to the Teams meeting. Well, what do we agree late was? Is 3 minutes late? Is 2 minutes late? Like if we don't have an agreed as a team what late is, then it's difficult to call someone out for it. I remember when I first started writing for Australia, our team director, the high performance director for Cycling Australia, Peter Day, he had a standard that was 10 minutes early for a team meeting was on time. And he was very clear about that. So I think clarity is really important with standards. And if you were 9 minutes early for the meeting, you would absolutely get grilled in front of the whole team. And if you were on time, the door would be closed and you weren't included in the meeting. And so everyone knew that was the standard and everyone adhered to it. But I think you need to be clear on what it is, that's what that standard is, and then there needs to be a consequence. And if you're not clear on the standard, if you don't have a consequence, then it's not a standard, and therefore it's not a value that you really care about.
I see that, and I just wish more people understood what you just said, more business leaders, because you're right. You go to any website, you go to anybody's business, and you will see their mission statement, their values. We have integrity. Well, do they?
Yes.
Do they?
Yeah.
And this comes back again personally. Do you actually uphold your standards? Well, one of our other hosts, Seba, is always telling the story of when he was working in South America. It was a bank that he was working for, and the current manager treated the local staff very badly. And he stood up for them and he got fired for it. But it was his values that he stood up for. So this is not only for your business, but it's for yourself.
Well, we'll get into trust, but I think that trust starts with yourself. Unless you have deep self-trust, I've got 5 pillars of trust in my formula. But if you don't have self-trust, then you can't then build team trust, stakeholder trust, and eventually leadership trust, and the pinnacle that we're all aiming for, which is customer trust.
Well, would you also agree that same framework works for respect, works for love, works for any of the big ones? If you do not respect yourself, if you do not love yourself, if you're not honest with yourself, then how do you expect that emotion, that value to be extended outwards if you're not doing it internally?
I do completely agree. But when we say self, that then comes back to standards.
Yeah.
Because it's like, what am I being honest about? What am I holding myself accountable to? And it all comes back to standards and understanding what your standards are and what to your friends, your co-founders example, a standard is something that you hold regardless. Doesn't matter if there's an audience, if you're by yourself, you're in front of the world, it's something that you that you've agreed that you're not going to budge on, and it's something that it's non-negotiable.
Well, isn't the old saying, character is how you present yourself when no one's looking?
Yeah.
I love this lesson, and I try to live it every day. And again, people, it's not that it happened overnight. It took me years to learn how to do this. And I wish I was as young as Matt when I started doing it, but I wasn't. That's fantastic, Matt. Let's go to lesson number 4, which is probably my favorite, but I really want to hear how you execute this. So lesson number 4, the bullshit audit.
Look, this came to me, a lot of these all turned up. So these are all basically in the book, in Not Why Not. And why not's obviously the fuel, that's the framework, that's the thing, that's the engine that drives everything. But there's 8 hard standards in the book. So we're actually, as we're listing through these lessons, they're the actual standards that are in the book. And a lot of them turned up in my life after that 10-year period. And I had been making excuses for everything. You know, if I didn't hit my, I was a salesperson, I spent most of my career in sales, didn't hit my number, or I didn't hit I might hit my number, I might hit 100%, but I haven't hit I had a goal at the beginning of the month of 120%, but I didn't get there, and then I'd make excuses of why. And then I'd have failed relationships, and I'd always be like, well, it's their fault, it's someone else's fault, they didn't do this, and it's always these excuses. And as a person with a disability, as a blind person, it's very hard. You probably think about all the things that are hard because, accessibility, systems don't work, you can't see, it's harder to read around. All these things are hard, right? What's actually the hardest thing is the whole world makes excuses for you because they go, oh, you're blind, you don't need to do that, Matt. Don't make it so hard on yourself. Or your systems, it's okay that you didn't do that. So they're basically always, opting you out of things. They're actually lowering the standard for you instead of increasing the standard. And so I noticed that this was happening in my life. And I call it the bullshit audit. It's 2 a.m. The way I articulate it in the book is the bullshit audit is basically, it's like your Instagram reel. So instead of the Instagram reel that's been edited nicely and you've cut parts out and you've added a bit of fast forward, a bit of slow-mo, you've added a nice little filter over it. The bullshit audit is you have to watch back your life in normal time. You have to hear the full audio, and there's no fast forward, there's no slow-mo. It's just looking at the real thing and then making a judgment whether if that's the person that you're proud of. And I think when you do it like that and you look at it in the reality of it without any rose-tinted glasses on, you can really make a judgment on whether you're proud of who you are.
Yeah. And it's not easy and it's not pleasant.
No. It's probably the hardest work you can do. But
Yes.
if you do it properly, it's the most valuable thing you can do.
Absolutely. It's incredibly hard. It's incredibly confronting.
Yeah. But I will say, like any other skill, the more you do it, the easier it gets.
Yes, absolutely. It is. The word you used is brilliant. It is a skill.
Yeah.
Like everything in life, if you keep practicing, keep training, you can do these things.
Yeah.
It's just becoming aware that you have to do this, becoming aware that this exists, becoming aware that there are times in your life you're an asshole.
Yeah.
And a lot of people refuse to admit things like this. But once you run this bullshit audit and look at your life, I agree with you, Matt. I think it will help you achieve more and know yourself better, and then tap into the other lessons that we spoke about. So,
Well, I think it's the baseline lesson, right? Because if you don't do this one,
yep,
you're just going to you can keep putting the slow-mo and the fast forward and the lovely filter on, and the rest of it doesn't matter because you're not actually, we all need data. If we're talking about a business podcast here, we all use data to make decisions, right? And if your data is not coming through clean, if it's been altered, then you're not actually being able to make those other changes because you're not using a baseline to make the changes from.
Exactly. You'll go off on a tangent and it will not give you the result that you're expecting. I think this is great. All of these, by the way, this is to our audience, all of these are not easy, but they're worth it. They're absolutely worth it, which leads us into lesson number 5. The hard way is the easy way. Tell me about that.
Don't want to be generationalist or whatever the word is, but I think a lot of the young people that I work with, they just don't want to work hard. And Therefore, they're not building capacity. And I think, I worked really, really hard in periods of my life, and now I find it easy. So, if we think about my current life, I sit on boards, I'm a professional athlete, I'm a dad, I'm a husband. I do all these different things. There's no way that I could have, 20 years ago, if you said I was going to do all those things, there's just no way. My brain would have just completely melted and fallen out of my ear. But because I worked hard in different areas, as you build capacity in different areas, they get easier because you work hard now, and then that skill, you build that muscle, you build that skill, then that becomes easy, then you build more skill. So the harder you work, the easier things get. It's counterintuitive, but that's reality.
Well, there's a psychological term which is unconscious competence.
Yes.
You go through stages of competencies. So, and the audience has heard me say this before, but it's worth repeating. You start with unconscious incompetence. You don't know what you don't know. Then you got conscious incompetence. You know what you don't know. And then you have conscious competence. You know what you know. And then at the end of it, it's unconscious competence. You don't know what you know. And you keep going back and forth between unconscious competence and conscious incompetence. So you know what you don't know, then you don't know what you know, because you keep learning, you keep cycling through that. But you got to take that first step. Yep. And, Matt is absolutely right. If you take the easy road, you're never going to learn anything.
No, and you won't build capacity.
You won't build capacity, and it's that capacity that keeps you going. I mean, from an inspirational point of view, and not because you have a disability, not because you're blind, but the mere fact that you have started this journey and you've gotten to where you've gotten with all of these accomplishments just proves that it does work.
Yeah.
So people, what can I say? The hard way is the easy way. Get off your ass, get off your bums, and get out there and do the work.
And there's one of the phrases in the book that I say, the harder you work now, the easier your future self will be. And I truly believe that, because the jobs that I did 15 years ago, for me to do now, I could almost do a sleep. But back then it was very, very stressful. Now I do all the things I do, and it's actually not that stressful because I've built all the capacities I need to do them.
All right, let's move to lesson number 6. I'm a little confused, Matt.
Okay.
So lesson number 6, the future is already real. What do you mean by the future is already real?
So we actually changed the name of this with my editor. We changed the name of this standard about 5 times, but essentially it's owning your future self. So believing that you are what you're not. So I set a world record in cycling. I worked with a lady called Louise Laffey, and Louise amazing. And she basically got me to say, I'm big on visualization. I've used it a lot through business, sport, all parts of my life. And so I visualized winning this race, standing on the podium with a gold medal around my neck. I wasn't a world champion at the time. I'm leading into the 2014 World Championships in Aguascalientes, Mexico. And Lou got to me to say, as I'm doing my visualizations of feeling the weight of the medal around my neck and hearing the Australian anthem and living in that future that wasn't real, like it wasn't a reality. And she got me to say, I am a world champion. And I said, Lou, I'm not a world champion. I'm not going to do that. I'm an Aussie bloke. We don't talk it up. That's not who I am. And she said, it is who you are. Own it, and then you'll walk into it. So I lived and breathed, and I was a world champion. Not walking around saying that to everybody out loud, but in private, as I'm doing the work, I lived and breathed that, and I felt that every day, and I felt the winning of going through the race, the pain that my legs would feel in the race, and I lived through and breathed through all the elements of the task and the accomplishment. And lo and behold, I became a world champion, and I stood there and I actually got to have that gold medal around my neck. And I've done that ever since with surfing Nazare. All the big tasks that I take on that people say aren't possible, I go through them in my mind and I make the future real. And then it just turns up for me.
That's amazing, because we've all heard of visualization. You're talking to an old man, so I was around for all the motivational speakers. And visualize. That's great, fantastic, but they never gave us an anecdote like this. They never gave us proof of how it worked, and you just did.
Yeah. And I think the visualization part, a lot of people do the visualizing, so they're seeing an image, but it's about using all the senses in your visualization, feeling whatever it is on your skin, feeling the temperature, feeling your heart rate increase, feeling the emotions. The feelings are actually more powerful than the vision. And then the auditory part as well. What are you hearing? All the things that come with that, the whole sensory experience, that immersion in that whole sensory experience is the most powerful way to visualize what you want to have in your
Brilliant.
future.
Absolutely brilliant. I've not done it. I'll be very transparent here with you, Matt. I've not visualized because I've never had anything that I wanted that much, but I can see it, how it would work.
Robert, it doesn't need to be sport either. And
No.
sorry to cut you off, but you might not have a dream, but it's actually a good way of solving business problems, because by visualizing and feeling that future part, like let's think about finishing a project or winning a large deal that's going to take you 18 months to close. If you feel like at the end of it, you'll actually start feeling, stop believing it because there'll be a problem that you need to solve. So you'll start solving those problems for the future, and that will give you things to do in your real world life to be able to make sure that visualization comes true.
Well, now that you say that, then I suppose I have been using this because I've been involved in a lot of organizational change in my career. And you can't go through organizational change without seeing where the organization is going to end up, without looking into the future and seeing what needs to be done to be there and what problems you'll have on the way, and then mitigating those issues. So yeah, I suppose I have done it. And in those cases, it does work. From a strategic point of view, it absolutely works. But you've given us a real taste of how it works. And you've shown me that I've been doing it, but I've never realized it in that manner. All right, lesson number 7. Now, we've had this lesson before, but I'm really interested in your take on it. Empathy is a superpower. Take it away, Matt.
I think we'll get into this later on, but as a leader, I used to think that, because I did it this way, that was the best way to do it. Therefore, you should do it this way. I don't think any leader hasn't gone through an iteration of that at some point. And if you have, then you're a lot more worldly person than I was when I was younger. But I realized, that as I got into more and more roles and more senior roles, that understanding people, started understanding, just in sales leadership, if you can understand what someone's doing, wanting to hit their number for, that's a powerful tool, because if they might want the next job, or they want to buy a Ferrari, or they want to put their kids through private school. Understanding that part obviously is a good way to motivate them and to help them stay on track. These are all pretty transactional things, but going deeper than that and actually understanding who people are, what makes them tick, what are their fears, where have they come from? I remember I went on a walk once with someone that I'd worked with for 15 years, and we started talking about our grandparents and the heritage of our families. And when you know people really deeply and who they are and how they tick, you can work better together. And as a leader, it's a superpower. So I've now taken that, because I realized how powerful it is. I've made that a conscious part of what I do. And I spend time, I consciously make time to be able to speak to the people that I work with and really find out what makes them tick, and not let the conversation go back into tactical talking about work mode. Like really just spending time on people, because I think if you want to lead teams and drive high performance teams, and I'm talking about this in business and sport, I do some of the most dangerous things that human beings can do. I need to lead teams where if someone makes a mistake, someone dies. So it's important work, and being a leader in those environments means that everybody comes home alive, which is a pretty important thing. So that's probably my biggest skill that I use as a leader now.
Look, empathy is incredibly important. The way you've described, the way you put it is a superpower. Again, I refer back to Seba, who has one of his lessons was don't judge until you understand. And that is so important. And what you're saying is that Obviously, still going back to everything you said, it's a skill. You need to practice it. Yes, you can feel empathetic about a situation, but if you don't understand what's driving the person, then your empathy is empty.
Yes.
You're just doing what you think society expects you to do.
Yes.
I think what you're talking about, Matt, is true empathy, something that
Yes. True
comes
empathy.
from within.
Yeah. It's not. And I would say that it's empathy for the team greater than the person.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a flawed concept I think that people take out of this, that it's about empathy is about being gentle and about lowering standards. It's
No.
not that at all. It's understanding people so that you can help them be their best version of themselves.
Yeah.
But if they're not able to turn up, and if they're, or maybe they don't have the same standards or they don't have the same values as the rest of the team always comes first. And then you help that person maybe find somewhere else to go. You know, it's not about using, lowering standards and making it easy for the person. It's just about understanding who they are. And so that you can, as a team, come together and find your shared moments.
Yeah, absolutely. If you go a little deeper, in my mind at least, it's about being human.
Yes.
You've got another human being there. Now, let's say they screw up. Okay, they've gone through a bad breakup or whatever,
Yes.
and they've screwed up a really important project. I can feel for them as a human being, but you screwed up a really important project, and I, as your leader, need to make you aware of that. And how can I assist you with your mental health
Yeah.
after I've explained how you've screwed this up?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that, oh, you screwed it up, you're a failure. It's
No.
just you need to understand how to talk to your team, how to tell them when they screw up, and how to help them, as Matt said. It's very important. The word team is there because you work together.
Yeah.
And without each other, it doesn't work. I think it's very powerful. It's
It's a topic that I could talk about for hours. It's so
yeah,
nuanced, and true empathy is about really just asking questions. That's what it's about. It's about having
yeah,
curiosity, and being inquisitive. Like there's my children say there's 5 values that my children say before they go to sleep each night, and being inquisitive is one of them. And I think true empathy comes from a place of being inquisitive.
yep,
And I think if you're coming at any problem, with someone's failed at a task or whatever, if you're to your point around you don't need to understand their background, why they did a certain thing, and if you come at the situation from an inquisitive perspective rather than a judgment perspective, you will always get the best outcome.
agreed. And like all your lessons, I'd like to just point out that everything that Matt has been talking about is got to be rooted in genuineness. You have to be genuine. It has to come from within, not performative.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to lesson number 8. It piqued my interest. Lesson number 8, own every hat.
Okay. This one's very complex, but I'll try and get through it as quick as I can. But essentially, I call them my hats.
Yep.
So I'm, as I've said before, I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I sit on boards, I'm an athlete. I do different things. So there's different ways to look at this, but first of all, there's the time management component of it. So when I'm wearing each hat, I give that hat 100% of my focus.
Yep.
So if I'm being a dad, I'm 100% focused on that. I'm not looking at my phone. I'm not doing other things. If I'm in a meeting, I'm not looking at my phone. I'm not thinking about being a parent. When I'm being an athlete and I'm training, I'm trying not to think about, work things that other than come into my mind. I just focus on being an athlete. And by just being focused on each one of my hats, I'm executing well in that arena. But also something that I've worked out through writing the book is there's this flawed concept that we talk about, which is about being one true self, about being a consistent version of ourselves. I believe that's a very flawed concept, because if I turn up as the best version of me being a mate to my mates in the pub into the boardroom, that's probably not going to be the best version of me. And me in the surf with my mates is a different version to me with my kids. And that's okay. What the consistent thing is my standards and my morals and my values. They don't change, but how I turn up, how I present in my different hats is a different version of me. And by being conscious of those versions of me, I can then actually grow that as a skill and be better at that version of me as I turn up. So in all the different businesses I work in, they might have different values as well as a business. So I know that those values they'll align to my values as a person, but I know how I turn up there. So there's the time element of it. There's the turning up and how you are within that hat. And then there's so many different ways that I go into it, but it's essentially knowing what hat you've got on at that time and being conscious of that, and therefore being the best version of that self.
That's brilliant. That is brilliant. And that revives the self-awareness conversation. You can't do any of that if you're not in touch with yourself.
Yeah, if you're not being honest about who that version of you is.
Yep, and that goes back to the honesty. You need to be honest about who you are.
Yep.
And it's, again, what a brilliant lesson for our listeners to hear. And hopefully those of you who are younger than, say, 40, really listen to this again. Every hat, as Matt says, if you own every part of yourself and you turn up authentically with that part every time, wonderful. Life will be wonderful and easier. Matt, that is a brilliant lesson. Let me ask you how long it took you to figure that out.
Well, most of my life, most of these things I've only unlocked in the last probably 10 years.
Yeah.
And then I've only been through the process of writing this book, I've been able to articulate these lessons, because you do things. It's like I would ask you, and I would ask the audience, how do you walk?
One foot in front of the other.
Okay, but a bit more detail. It's a challenging thing to answer, right? Because we just walk.
We just walk.
We've been doing it since we were a kid, and so therefore we just do it, and we don't know how we do it.
Yep.
Our hip flexors fire, and our knees, and we do all these things happen in our bodies, but we don't know how to articulate it.
Yep.
And it's the same with a lot of the things that we build as capacities in our business mind, in the way we present as parents, and as the way we turn up in our sporting club. We just do it.
Yeah.
But it's until you sit down and you start working out, how do I do these things? It takes till you actually go, oh, that's a lesson. And when you do those things, when you self-reflect and you work out how you do things, then you can then make it a conscious thing and you make it a skill, and then you can lean into it and get better at it.
Yep.
So,
True.
So it took me a long time to work these things out. But essentially where that one really came about was when I was in 2014, I was a professional cyclist. I was riding about 100 kilometers a morning, running a sales team. I'm doing training in the morning. I do gym at lunchtime. I was married. I had my first child. I did 140% of my sales number that year. And you said it in my intro, one of the largest corporates in Australia. I was doing all these things. So I had to build this skill. I did it unconsciously. I didn't do it on purpose, but I had to build this skill of wearing all these different hats and doing the time management part of it, and then getting conscious about, being efficient in all those parts, because I just didn't have time. I was running 4 lives, but I didn't have the time to run 4 lives. So I just had to build the capacity and the efficiency to be able to fit all those lives into one life.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, a lot of people use the term compartmentalize. I personally disagree with that. I like your method better. Be aware of it and schedule them.
Yes.
Schedule. This time I'm going to be a dad. This time I'm going to be a husband. This is the time I'm going to be an athlete. No.
And then you're non-negotiable right on that time. That time can't then be, pushed out because of something else pops up.
That's an important factor. It's not negotiable. Do it. Be true to yourself and stick to it. No, I love Matt. This is great stuff. I really appreciate that. And I don't think we're going to get any controversy over that, but we may get controversy over lesson number 9.
Yes, we definitely will.
So, and it's not that I disagree with it, but it's the way it's worded. So people, you need to listen to Matt's lesson here and try to understand the intent behind it. So lesson number 9, diversity and inclusion need a divorce, but they should stay close friends.
So this is not one of the lessons in my book. This is not one of the hard standards, but it is a chapter, and it is something that I strongly believe.
Yep.
The world's gone a bit mad on DEI. I work a lot in this space. So for anyone that's judging right now, I've probably done more work in this space than most people in the world. It's a flawed concept. So, and the reason it's a flawed concept is because we're including, from a business, especially from a business perspective. So we're including the words diversity and inclusion as one bundled product.
Yep.
And they don't work together. So diversity is absolutely a value add for businesses. So if you think about a board, you definitely don't want 9 men or 9 women that all grew up in the same suburb and all had, that all had the same life experience and went to the same university on a board, because they will absolutely have groupthink and they will not generate the best outcomes and decisions.
Yep.
So 100% diversity is a great thing. And having people from wide range of, diverse lived experience, challenges, backgrounds, work experience, that's what you need, right? So no challenges there. Inclusion though, people shouldn't just be included because they're diverse, because they have a different gender, or they have a disability, or they have anything. We shouldn't just be carving off roles for people in business because we want to include them. So where inclusion works, I used to, I coached junior rugby league. My son was about when he was playing under 9s. Our next door neighbour was at the same class as him. He had Down syndrome. So young Jacob, and this story's in my book. Young Jacob had Down syndrome. He was not able to play at with the boys full time. But I said to his mum, let's put him in the team. So he registered. She said, we'll just get him to play one game. I said, no, he can be at every training session. He'll play every game, but slightly differently. So he would turn up to training. One of our other neighbours would help out. He would do some of the drills that he could do, but most of the drills he'd have to just do something else. He'd turn up to a game. I'd say to the other coach before the game, hey, mate, I've got one of the boys on our team. He's got Down syndrome. You kick off to us. Our boys will get him the ball. He'll run and score a try. Just let your players know not to tackle him, and then he'll come off the field. So he gets to be part of the game in his way. So I'd tee these coaches up. The other players it'd be like something out of Rambo. The other players would run at him and they'd like fake dive away, and everyone loved it. The community was right behind it. Most of the time, Jacob would turn up in his team jersey. Sometimes he'd turn up in his Parramatta Eels jersey. Sometimes he'd turn up in his Parramatta Eels jersey with his Parramatta Eels ball, and I couldn't get him to give me his ball. So he'd be running down the field with the game ball and his Parramatta Eels ball. And he'd score his try. Biggest smile on the whole planet. Great, right? That's inclusion.
Yeah.
So he got to be part of it. But then when we get back to playing, he'd go off the field. The boys are then back into full game mode. And it's about who's the best, who's the best team. So I think in business it's the same way. Like I think at an entry level, yes, we can do some inclusion and bring people into entry level roles. But when we start carving off roles I've seen it now in business where for certain genders or whatever, we've assigned a target, and then it gets people's nose out of joint, because then people sometimes they feel like they've earned the role, or someone else is judging them because they were just included because they were different. And it just doesn't work. So that's why I believe that diversity and inclusion, they need a divorce. So we need to look at them as two separate things, and they both have a lot of value. But when you bundle them together, which we've done in corporate Australia, it absolutely doesn't work.
Yeah, well, it's not just corporate Australia, is it?
Well, no, it's not. It's the globe. Well, it's Western society that the rest of the world hasn't taken off and gone mad on it, but Western society has. And look, it's important, but we need to get it right, and we need to understand what it is we're doing.
Well, I had a guest on from the UK who said DEI doesn't work unless you have an off-ramp, unless you have an exit plan.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we just don't have an end date for it. People are going to continue to do it because there is still a lot of people out there who don't get it.
But I think even that phrase, diversity, inclusion, I think you're still bundling the two words together with an end date. So
true.
I think we just need to say diversity in business, and inclusion needs to be a thing that's not necessarily needs to be in business. We don't need to include people just for the sake of including them.
I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I mean, I wrote my master's thesis on board diversity, and I made this similar point to what you're making. It just gets me because this whole argument is very similar to equality and equity argument.
Yes.
I mean, equality and equity are two different things.
Absolutely.
So let's all try and just figure this shit out, because we need to live in a kinder, better world. Maybe I'm getting too old, and maybe I'm getting cranky when I see the injustice. But I've been in business for a very, very long time. And the one thing I do not like in business is quotas.
Yes.
There's no need for a quota.
It's a flawed concept.
It is.
Yeah. I think, like, if you're talking about quotas for roles, I think you can potentially do, if you really want to do diversity and you want to do a bit of inclusion, you could potentially do quotas for the talent pool. So people get included at a talent pool level, but once you get to a decision level, there should be no quotas involved.
Yeah. That's a good idea. I like that.
Yeah.
We can, again, talk about this for a long time, but as I said, it's going to be controversial. So,
absolutely.
People, to help our algorithms.
I'm up for the discussion.
Yep. To help our algorithms, if you don't agree with this, just put it in the comment and we'll make sure that we get back to you. I'll send them over to Matt and he'll reply as well. Okay, let's move on to our final lesson, which is, I don't know, it baffles me because while I understand one word, the other two I need an explanation for. So lesson number 10 is all about trust, the bedrock and the amplifier. What do you mean by the bedrock and the amplifier?
I believe that trust it's the foundation of high performance or business or anything, and it's also the amplifier. So you've got to get it right, otherwise you don't have a foundation. And when you get it, and when you really get it right, it will just amplify everything you do.
Still don't get it.
Okay. So let me give you my formula for trust.
Okay.
So trust equals standards times consistency times time. And the times, Mark, is intentional. So it's a multiplication. There's no addition. So if any of those variables, standards, consistency, time, are zero, it's all zero. If you get trust right, you can charge higher margins, you get better retention, less churn. It's just good for everything, right? It's good for leadership. And we can apply this formula to any, you can apply it to business, to people. You can apply it to a product. For example, Apple, they've had high standards in their product. They've done it consistently, they've done it over time. So therefore they have a high amount of trust in their products. People will argue that, but I'm just going to use that as an example. And you could say that about people. And then if you look at brands that have been damaged because they've made mistakes, they're either their standards have dropped or they've been inconsistent. So you can apply this formula to anything. But so then people will say, oh, well, you know, if you get trust right, then you get that the right to charge higher margins, you get better. So they'll say that as the benefit on top. But I would say I think it's the top, it's the thing that actually makes things amplify and escalate. And if you get it right, you can just take over the whole market, right? Because whoever has the highest amount of trust in the market will therefore basically own most of the market share. But if you don't have it as a baseline, then you just will erode all of your business.
Okay, let me see if I get this. So trust is the bedrock. In other words, is the foundation of everything you do.
Yes.
And without that foundation, then everything crumbles. We know that. Yeah. But because you have that foundation and because you're solid, that amplifies you or your business or whatever in your circle, in your sphere of influence.
Whatever you're doing.
Yep. So you need trust to build the foundation. You need the foundation to be solid, to basically herald out the fact that you are trustworthy.
And when you get it right, like when you go from just having a baseline of trust to being very, very good at it and building that trust, I call it a trust mountain. So every little evidence of trust, every time you have a standard and you do it consistently, you build a little grain of sand and you eventually build this trust mountain.
Yep.
When you build a trust mountain, you can do whatever you want. And that in your career, for example, if you're the person that's trusted in your business, you can say, well, I'm going to do this crazy thing in the business. You know, if you build enough credibility, the business will say, yeah, let's go, and I'll back you on it. It works everywhere.
I like that. I'm going to have to think that through a lot more, but I understand what you're saying. I see the power of it. I just personally need to internalize it because I've never heard it before. Not that I disagree with it by any stretch of the imagination, but
it's my current goal is to be the world leader in trust, because I just don't think enough people value it.
Yeah,
People know
agreed.
that it's an important thing. They call it a value, but then they don't say, well, okay, well, how do you build it? How do you measure it? But with this formula that I built, you can actually build it, you can measure it,
Yep.
and therefore you can use it as a tool.
Matt, you have shared with us 10 very powerful lessons. And I really appreciate you making time from your busy schedule to have a chat with me and discuss these and share these lessons with the world. I really do appreciate that. Before we sign off, let me ask you one question.
Okay.
So, what would you have told your 20-year-old self with all the knowledge you have now? If
Yeah.
you had the opportunity to jump in your Wayback Machine, what
Yes.
would you have told your 20-year-old self?
It's funny, I get asked this question. I think I'll change the answer, but I always answer the same way. Don't worry about what other people think too much. I was way too worried about everyone else's opinions and thoughts, and worry less about what other people think. And that doesn't mean you have to, therefore be bad or impact other people negatively. Like definitely care about other people and don't have create negative impacts for them, but definitely don't do things because you worry about what they think.
Yeah, that's great. And I wish that I had said that to myself many years ago as well. I mean, we all do it now, but
Yes.
we're wiser now. We've been through it and we realize that it doesn't matter what people think of us.
No.
And the truth is, people don't think of us.
No, that's right. It's a very egotistical thing to worry that other people think about you, right?
It really is.
And I think that the flawed concept in that whole exercise is that if either of us told the younger versions of ourselves that advice, it would have fallen on deaf ears, because you can't put an old head on young shoulders.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah.
Matt, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. I really want to thank you again for making the time and sharing your wisdom with us. If there's anything that you would like to say before we sign off.
Not really. Get your hands on a copy of Why Not? And if you've got a corporate conference coming up, I'd love to come and chat to your team.
So let's all thank our guest today, Matt Formston. Matt is a speaker, an author, an athlete. He's on boards of directors. He's done a lot and is a member of the Order of Australia. So once again, Matt, thank you so much for your time today. You'll see a link to Matt's book. Go ahead and you've got all of Matt's details in those links. Go ahead and book Matt, get his book, and definitely listen to this again. Thank you all for tuning in to 10 Lessons Learned, where we try to make the world a little wiser, lesson by lesson. Thank you. See you next time.